Hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today in this beautiful place. We are here to hear very inspiring voices from contemporary Europe. We are going to talk about literature, but not only about literature, because our today's guests are far more than writers. They are also filmmakers, songwriters, thinkers. And these very special guests all come from different parts of Europe, from Latvia, from Georgia, from Wales, which is part of UK, as you know. As far as I'm concerned, my name is Dr. Julien Paret. I'm a French scholar. I'm based in Bangalore. I'm working for Alliance University, a fast-growing institution located in the state of Karnataka, and that holds twice by year its own literary festival, same as here, the ALF, the Alliance Literary Festival, in collaboration with MBIFL, by the way. And I'm a professor at the School of Liberal Arts, and I'm also the director of the Alliance Center for Eurasian Studies, a research center on Eastern European and Central Asian cultures. And today I have the honor and the pleasure of being the moderator of this session, of this discussion session between three prominent figures of contemporary European culture. So we have here, first of all, the playwright, songwriter, scriptwriter, podcaster, public speaker, professor, scholar, theater director, and novelist Rasa Bugavicute Pece from Latvia. The actor, screenwriter, photographer, birdwatcher, and novelist, and also nature guide, Archil Kikodze from Georgia, and the novelist, journalist, screenwriter, and professor Niall Griffiths from Wales. First of all, I would like to introduce Rasa. Rasa is a prolific author and a multi-awarded writer. Rasa was almost born with a pen in her hand because she was already writing her first stories when she was in preschool, telling the stories about the daily life of her cat at this time, right? She's a playwright at the Liepaja Theatre and the only resident dramaturge of all Latvia. So she's a very special writer. She's not only fluent in Latvian, our working language, but also in French, in English, and in Lithuanian, because she has Latvian-Lithuanian roots. She's an author of numerous plays and 2 novels. My Name is Klimpa, and I Like Everything, and The Boy Who Saw in the Dark, which has been nominated for the very prestigious European Union Prize for Literature. She has also written scripts for films, and her dramas are not only played in Latvia, but also almost everywhere in Europe, in Estonia, in Lithuania, in Russia, even in Israel. And apart from that, Rasa is also a teacher. She is teaching at Liepaja University, and she's currently pursuing a PhD in drama studies at the Latvian Academy of Culture. And we have also Archil Kikodze here. He's the most prominent Georgian writer of the 21st century. He has published short stories, essays, articles, novellas, novels, and won numerous prizes. He's fluent in Georgian, in Russian, in English. And he is an experienced birdwatcher and nature guide who is not only a professional hiker and a great traveler, but also a travel writer, since he has written several travel guides about the mountains of Georgia, his fatherland. Archil is a very versatile artist. He wrote the screenplay for the international movie Tbilisi, I Love You, and played in several movies, especially in Blind Dates, in which he holds the leading role. Archil is also a professional photographer and ethnographer. He has participated in various exhibitions around the world. His books are all bestsellers in Georgia, and they have been translated into Swedish, German, Polish, into many different European languages. His main books are The Story of a Bird and a Man, a collection of essays and short stories, and especially The Southern Elephant, the most important book of contemporary Georgian literature, probably, which is with a life journey of an aging film director in the streets of Tbilisi. And finally, our last guest today is Niall Griffiths from Wales. He is the leading Welsh writer of his generation. He's a multi-awarded author of 8 novels and multiple short stories, audio plays, critical articles, travel books, book reviews, restaurant reviews also, and much more. He's a regular contributor to The Guardian, the BBC, and many other media outlets throughout UK. Niall is a writer who is bigger than picture, I would say. He has been a laborer, a barman, a several fish and chips, a burglar, a farmer, factory worker, and many other professions. But only prominent authors such as, I don't know, Bukowski or Fante could imagine. Now, Niall is a full-time writer who lives at the foot of a wide landscape in Wales, and who speaks out for the underclass, the marginals, and the other so-called deplorables of contemporary Great Britain. And through his books, he gives a voice to the losers of globalization, I would say, and neoliberalization in contemporary Europe. Niall has started his writing career in 2000 by publishing Grit, that became a classic, and followed it 1 year later by Shipshagger, a novel which is based on a pejorative English word to define the people living in Wales. And in 2002, he published Kelly plus Victor, one of his most famous books, who later has been adapted to a movie. And he is also a teacher in creative writing at Wolverhampton University. And to start the discussion with our guests and to break the ice, I would like to ask them a question which is based on, I would say, on my own experience as a specialist, I would say, of Russian contemporary politics. I would like to talk about their impression of their experience of coming from, I would say, the margins of Europe, because Latvia was occupied by Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. Georgia was occupied also by the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. And Wales has been conquered by the British Empire. And one of the reasons why Niall is writing in English and not in Welsh, it is because of the legacy of British imperialism, I would say. So I would like to ask this question to our guests. You know, in India, I'm living in India for now a bit more than 1 year, and I have noticed that people, because of colonization and westernization in general, they tend to see the Western world, especially Europe, as some kind of unidimensional block, without any kind of distinction. But you all, actually, you come from the margins of ancient empires. As I said, such as the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, the British Empire. And you come from cultures which has experienced and endure a process, I would say, of internal European colonization, because your mindset has been also shaped by the Soviet Union, by the Russian Empire, by the British Empire. So I would like to know your personal opinion about your Russian background, your Soviet background, or your British background, because you are all, I would say, very enrooted in your own culture, in the Baltic culture, in the Georgian culture, in the Welsh culture. So, how do you live for your own works? This, I would say, hybridization between the empires of the past and your contemporary culture, contemporary nations. Who would like to start?
Hello everyone, thank you all for the question. It is a tough one. I am from the generation which is the first one outside the Soviet Union. My childhood happened already in Latvia and in our freedom state of mind. And I think that every single thing that had happened since then, which is related with Russia and everything they do with the countries which are not theirs, is something we try to fight against. When I think about the impact on my life, the only thing that pops my mind is the thing that I had this weird conversation with my mother, which was born in Soviet Union. That we were talking about dreaming, about possibilities, how to achieve our dreams, how to do what we love, what we want, how we can make it happen. And my mother didn't get the idea of it, because when she studied, she finished her high school, and then the government sent her to the place where she had to work, and she was just like someone in the system. So I think that our generation, millennials, are the ones who has to break the ice somehow and to prove to everyone in our Latvia, then we can manage whatever we want and whenever we want. So I think that this is something very important to us. But if I have to speak about my work related to this topic, then I think my latest play is about something what we cherish in Latvian culture very much, which is singing. We have this huge song festival each 5 years. This is like a really huge thing. Choir of 10,000 people sings, and there is just one director who directs all this thing. And so it is a festival 1 week. Riga is just full with everyone who lives in Latvia, and every single one person sings. So I wrote this play about this topic because when we started this festival, it was when we were under German wing, so to say, before Soviet Union, before Russian invasion, and all the time this festival have been something with what we could fight against something. But nowadays, with this festival, we have to fight for something. And this is our freedom, our voices, our possibility to speak, our values, etc. But the situation, what is happening in Ukraine, the war, is the reason why we have to reevaluate all these things. We have to understand how we stand on this ground. We have to feel our roots, etc. And somehow, at first, I didn't want to write about this in my work because I think it's something at first I thought that I don't understand it. But actually, we have a huge impact of that awfulness, what is going on there in our everyday life. So it just popped in my work, and we can't escape it, unfortunately. So that's it.
Thank you, Rasa. Archil?
So, Georgian issue is the same but little bit different because we were under Russia much, much longer than the Latvians. So we were 200 years under Russia. First Russian Empire, then after revolution in Russia we had 3 years of independence, which was very good for the future to prove that we had a first republic. And then the Soviet Russia invaded us again. Somehow, you should know, Georgia is a tiny country. It was always on the crossroads of big empires, and somehow our history teaches that we survived from the fights all the time. Our official history teaches, but we also had to negotiate. We had to learn how to live under big empires, and as far as Georgians, how to say, are quite talented and quite selfish people, you know, and they need the space to explore their talents. Georgians were becoming generals of Russian Kingdom Army, generals of Persian Army. They were ruling Baghdad. They were ruling in Egypt. So some Georgians were converted. So they needed this space, you know. Sometimes they needed empire. Joseph Stalin is worst example of this talent, so-called. Also, to be part of empire has a little charm. You know, you are not make decisions yourself. You know, someone else is making decisions, and you can say they are bad. You know, and then suddenly you are becoming independent. You have to learn to be really independent, and you have to learn to be master of your own fortune. You have to think about your own state, and not like a big empire who you don't mind. And Georgians did not mind about in late Soviet time in Georgia, there was no single man who believed in communism. There were a lot of Communist Party members for career, but you will not find anyone who... So it was quite a strange place in Georgia. was something like Soviet Riviera because it was hot, we had wine, we had sea, and some little bit more freedom was allowed than in some other places. Just a little, because the guys from Moscow, they also needed, you know, place to relax. So that was the Georgia place, so be a little bit relaxed. So my childhood I spent in Soviet Union. I graduated school in '89. Then it starts to crash. Then the Berlin Wall falls, and we were one of first who came out to the street and the Baltic countries and in Caucasus, Georgia. We were really first for independent, and we fight it for independent. People were killed for independent that time in '89. Demonstrants who were not armed at all, and it's changed us. So it was a really big movement, really big national movement. We got independent. I don't think that we were very ready for this independent. That's why the process of boiling still is going. That's why it's so interesting country to be a writer in, but sometimes it's too difficult to live there because our nation still are struggling about some values, and there is a big crashes inside this society, but it's quite a place, you know. It's perfect place to visit for Georgians. Sometimes it's hard to be member of this society. Now about cultural influence of Russia. Of course there was some. You cannot say that there was no, because we were part of this empire, but for literature it was minimal. You have just to trust me. Then we got access to European literature through the Russia, of course, because Georgians went to study to St. Petersburg. Of course, these were noble Georgians who had money to study. They come back, they start to fight for independence. This case happening quite often. Then empire, and India is one of examples, then empire borns inside himself his anti-own thesis, and guy who created Georgian nationalism, the greatest Georgia, he was educated in Russia. Back to literature, I will finish. Not a long time ago, I thought about it, and my thoughts was like this, that really the first Georgian prose writers there is inspired by Prosper Mérimée, by Balzac, by Flaubert, not because you are French, not because, but that was. Then Soviet time came up translations of William Faulkner, who had a huge influence on Georgian literature. They were inspired by Latin American writers because there are many similarities, post-colonial things, and so on, so on. But these writers were coming to us in Russia. And so the translations of Russia, because we had a touch with world literature through the Russia, it's changed a little bit our language. Now the forms, because we like these forms, how they were translated, and nowadays then my editor is telling me, you know, Archil, this sentence is, you are putting right like Russian writer should be. No, it's not right, it's translator who translate someone, and it's set in my mind forever, my beloved writers. So that's it so far.
Thank you very much for your answer. Niall?
I'm very aware that I'm sitting next to two people whose country's struggle for independence was really urgent, you know, and violent actually. It was a struggle from, you know, naked oppression really. Wales still is at the moment moving towards independence. It will not be bloody like that, like theirs was, but it's no less urgent in some ways. The feeling of unfairness is very, very strong and very, very deep when you are ruled by a political party that nobody voted for. Scotland is exactly the same. Nobody, very, very few people in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, before, you know, three of the nations of the United Kingdom, voted for the Conservative Party. but we have them in power. Wales, they did go through devolution, so certain things are devolved to the Welsh government and the Scottish government in Scotland and so on. During the pandemic, for instance, Wales actually closed its border with England, which I was quite amazed at. I didn't know we could do, to be honest with you. But it's no less urgent in the sense that, especially after Brexit, and especially after Britain lost the empire. I mean, Welsh people, as well as Scottish people, as well as Northern Irish people, some of them were enthusiastic participants in the imperial adventure. You know, there would have been Welsh people here, for instance. But since Britain's lost the empire, since '47 really, when the country we're in now gained its independence, Britain has been finding its place in the world, and it hasn't got one. It doesn't know what to do with itself. It wanted to, the slogan, make Britain great again. This always happens. I was speaking to Rasa before. When someone decides to make their country great again, they always make it a lot worse. We see that in a much bloodier way with Putin. He wanted to make Russia great again. He's actually making it isolated on the world stage, a pariah dog, a shameful nation. Britain did the same thing with Brexit, I think. And I think it's beginning to find out now. It's been a long, slow process, but it's beginning to recognise now that actually what Britain is a mid-ranking, mid-economy European country. And it has to face up to that. I think as well, Britain being one of the very first models of empire, as you correctly pointed out, you know, Wales essentially became part of England in 1167 when Prince Llewellyn had his head cut off. So now it's been taking, what, 900 years? It took Ireland 800 years to free itself. So in terms of writing, I think it's anticipating what is going to happen. A lot of writers based in Wales, and I write in English as well. I don't write in Welsh. There are two languages in Wales, of course. I think a lot of people are anticipating the role that Wales will have within Europe when the UK breaks up, which I think is only a matter of time, to be honest. In some ways, it's very exciting times. You know, this seems to have an unstoppable momentum now, as it has in Scotland too. So that's quite exciting. But in other ways, it's almost painful to think we've been forced into this by people who we didn't vote for, who have no respect for the autonomy of the four nations that are within Great Britain. So exciting times, but worrying times as well.
Thank you very much. As you can see, the experience of our prestigious guests from Latvia, Georgia, and Wales remind us the situation of Indian literature, in India also, because no matter in which language the writers are writing, it can be in Hindi, it can be in Malayalam, it can be in Kannada, they have, in any case, they have this experience of colonization behind them, and it has shaped their mindset. It is very complicated to bond again with the ancient ties of a literature, pre-colonial literature. And since we were trying I would say, to exorcise the ghosts of the past, the shadows of the past, I would like our guests to give us their impression and about the topic of the festival, and try to tell us about why did they accept to join us today to speak at this festival, and especially to speak about this topic, and to meet the Indian audience, because I think that the Latvian authors, Georgian authors, Welsh authors have something to bring to the Indian audience, and I think that connection can be established today and can be very inspiring for the audience. Rasa, could you start?
Yes, I will start. I am here because of my book, but I am a playwright. So I think the values of playwriting are stuck with me, and I can't get rid of them, and I don't want to get rid of them. And I think that these values somehow helps to me to write books, also as well. And one of the things that I try to keep up in mind all the time is that no matter about what I write, either it's a boy, either it's a boy who is born in a family where his parents are blind, which is the case of my story, either it is someone who lived a long time before, or my cat. This someone who is in the center of this story has the same desires I do. I want to be loved, I want to be understood, I want to be cherished, I want to be someone who receives love from my family and from my friends. And this is the thing I use in every single work I do, and I put it in every single character I work with. I try to stick with the love, I guess, because when I think about all the bad things which we have to deal with in our personal lives or in our political lives, because we are impacted by it, we want it or not, there are only some few bright moments that like take us through all these situations, and if we speak about the topic of this festival, the shadow of history and the light of future, one thing I can mention about my book is that it is about a boy who lives in a family where both parents are blind, and his childhood is weird, and his childhood is different, and he basically born being responsible for his parents. But his childhood started in Soviet Union, so in history, in the shadow of history actually. And that was the time when, at least in Latvia, all disabled persons were put aside. They lived in special dorms, not in the center of cities, but away from the center, from all people, because it was easier for government to show that we have this perfect society. But unfortunately, the reality is that nowadays, when we are free already for more than 30 years, these people still are in those blocks, in those dorms. There is nothing much changing, but the light of future is the literature and the possibility for us to show everyone that we have these kind of problems, so we need to do something with them. And we have this possibility to analyze situations, to analyze them through personal experiences of different persons. And we have this possibility to make our society better, I think. Maybe I'm naive, but I will stick with that. Because I think that when we show up the reality of those who are in this dark environment, we give them possibility, we give us possibility to become better persons, just to know that there are something we can do better than we did before. So I think that this is my light of future. Possibility to look back, take my notes, understand what was wrong there, and just do it better, for my kids, at least.
Thank you very much. Archil?
I am coming from family of storytellers. There was no such a profession, but my grandfather, my father, they were great storytellers, you know. And both have this talent. Maybe they will be they could be writers, because both have talents there to see the main things in whole story, or tell you main things in someone's character in one sentence, and you could understand what type of person it was. I don't know, writing is something for me, unfortunately, I don't believe that literature can change the world, but I believe that good book written by a writer, can help someone on the end of the world to feel that someone good, that he is not alone. And that's enough, I think. That's, that we are not alone. There is someone who passed through. He is just better storyteller. And let's say a couple words about storytelling. So I have a perfect memory. Honestly, in my life, I have never met anyone who has such a good memory of facts. I remember, and I'm suffering with this a lot because others are forgetting. My wife is forgetting some moments which I want her to remember. Yes, my friends, and always it's not easy life. Yeah, it makes me angry sometimes. But I'm looking around how others are changing their own stories, you know. In those stories, they are more heroical, or they are answering better answers, and they are also creators. So all of us, we are creators. There is no something like true in stories, I mean. But if we catch the main topic, if we are honest narrators, yes, we can be useful for society as well. Because official history, unfortunately, lies very, very often. You know, it makes, because official history is written, it's about politics, it's less guiltiness, and literature is a lot about guiltiness, yes. Political history is success story, literature is about success story. Literature is not interesting. So literature, so imagine that literature which is lying, yes, it's more true than official history because it captures right moments. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
I'm kind of just going to rephrase what Archil just said. I agree with him entirely. Similarly as well, there was no books in the house when I was being brought up, but it was full of stories all the time, from my grandparents mainly about, you know, the old countries and the war and ghost stories, lots of ghost stories. And there seemed to be something profoundly true about them, even though they were fiction. You know, even the stories about ghosts, there was something very true about them. It was kind of the rawness of experience, and they seem to embody and crystallize and symbolize the kind of human need for the world to mean something and to have some kind of pattern. And there seems to be some truth, some universal truth in that. And I think the darkness of where we are now, I think, is reality is a negotiable concept. Objective truth, our people in power are telling us is untrue. They're telling us that we didn't see what we saw and we didn't hear what we actually heard. Putin, of course, is a prime propagandist, and he's been doing this for a long, long time. The British government did it during the Brexit vote as well. You know, Turkey's about to join the EU. That's a lie. Lie upon lie upon lie. Now, when they're pulled to tell you, you know, you said this 5 years ago, they said, we actually didn't. You can present them with fact that they said this, and they will say to you in your face that they didn't say it. They did. So I think that's the real danger of where we are now, is that reality, objective truth, is something that you can mold to your will and to your ideological ends, and I think that's really, really dangerous. So I think storytelling, it's kind of like permanent truths based on temporary lies, you know. We're exploring the darkest chambers of the human heart, and we're talking about what everyone really yearns for. And I see that the more I travel the world. I see the commonality that various nationalities have, and I find that very, very uplifting. I agree with Archil that literature can't change the world, no, but it can incrementally add tiny little drops to the side of scales that is on the side of truth and justice and love and everything else that is nice. But I think that's where we are.
Thank you very much. Regarding your answers and the topic of this festival about the lights of the future, I would like to ask you if you believe that literature, I would say, has some kind of therapeutic mission, because Rasa, you were telling it's obvious that you are putting your heart in your writings. We can feel that, and you are expecting. You give a lot of yourself. For example, your most famous novel, as far as I remember, The Boy Who Saw in the Dark, was based on the personal life of your husband. Niall, for example, literature, by some way, saved your life because you were a juvenile delinquent, and it helped you to improve your attitude and to find your way in life. And you, Archil, as far as I know, you started writing in 1991, 1992 after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when when Georgia was in crisis because of civil war in Ossetia, in Abkhazia also. So do you believe in the therapeutic power of literature? Rasa?
Yes, I absolutely do believe in it, but again, I will switch a little bit to theater stuff and to playwriting, which is my basics. We recently, during one rehearsal, spoke about this thing in theater with all my actors and director I worked with, and we spoke about the most wonderful thing that theater gives you. It is the possibility to speak about things a lot of human beings never dared to speak to anyone. But there we were sitting around the table. Because of the play, we had to analyze and like understand it, and we were talking about very specific stuff, like about the family, about politics, about everything we have to deal with. And for me, the most valuable thing that playwriting and literature gives is a possibility to talk. Like it is a great way to find topics for conversations you could never have differently in your life. You just have to find someone to talk to. But if you don't have, I think the book is great like reason why to dive into dialogue with yourself as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Archil?
Of course, it's a therapy. It's a therapy for author. It's a therapy for reader. For me, it definitely was. Maybe it saved me. I don't know, because then I started writing my first short stories. Time was terrible in Georgia, really terrible. I don't want to discuss this time. And my only readers were my friends' grandmothers. And for whom I was like, you know, they liked that their grandson has such a friend who is writing something, and they loved me, they were inviting me. So that's why I say that my first readers, they are all gone, no one is alive now. And then I think about imagination reader, old woman for me with having some cozy kitchen. So for them it was therapy also. Imagine then we read someone, you know, and the end is terrible there, and I believe everyone is reader here. The final is terrible, but after you have some, you are not unhappy, you are happy. There is something very real, real big literature, and this is important, of course, and it's the best. You read books, you look better than you are old, you know. You are not as ugly as you. It makes you interesting looking.
Yes, is the short answer to your question. I find the writer, the life of a writer, and of course every writer is a big reader, seems to be quite a cozy one, really. You know, you're just sitting at a desk with a blanket on you and a cat and a cup of tea, and you're either writing or reading. But I find myself overwhelmed by emotion, a torrent of emotion, and I kind of want to throw the book across the floor, really. Writing gives you psychic fuel for being alive. I think it's one of the most intensely, reading as well, it's one of the most intensely rewarding experiences. And in terms of therapy, then definitely yes, I teach quite a lot, and I do have people coming up to me at the end of the week-long course saying, you know, I exercised an awful lot of ghosts and demons in that week, and I feel a better person for having done this course. And as Rasa said, it's kind of having a conversation with yourself. It is. It definitely is. It's having a conversation with the part of yourself that sometimes you'd sooner not have a conversation with, but it's in there. As someone said, I think in Forster, he said, a great book reads you. I think that's perfectly true.
Thank you very much. I would like also to ask you another question related, I would say, a bit different, related to the literary legacy of the European continent, because this session is entitled Voices from from Europe. Given that Europe has produced, I don't know, Marcel Proust, Anton Chekhov, Charles Bukowski, and do you think that it's still possible nowadays to be disruptive, to be innovative? I would like to ask you this question because it is a common ground that you all have here, I think. For example, Rasa, I remember that in your first novel, My Name is Klimka, tell me if I'm wrong, but the numbers of your chapters reflect the age of a narrator. It is something which is unusual. Archil, you described the city of Tbilisi, the streets of Tbilisi, with, I would say, the eyes of an ethnographer. It is also something which is a bit disruptive, a bit unusual, innovative. And Niall, of course, you use a lot of, I would say, Welsh slang and we would say sometimes inappropriate vocabulary because you try to make the underclass people speak out through your pen. So, after judging regarding all the legacy of European culture, of European literature, do you think it's still possible to be innovative, to be disruptive in literature?
The titles of chapters from age were in the Boy Who Saw in Dark, in the second book. I think it is possible to be innovative in some ways, but I never go myself from that point to start to do anything. It's not my intention to make something innovative. Now I will think about this a lot. Oh my God, why am I not thinking about this? Yeah, for me the most important thing is story. But then again, when I think about what I like to read, I guess it is the fact that nowadays, at least in Latvian literature, a lot of stories, a lot of novels, a lot of poems actually also are quite fragmented. Yes, and I think the impact of that is because we are like generation who looks a lot TV series and movies, and we somehow like to switch from one thing to another, even when we read those stories. That's why a lot of authors try to like put this the same composition in their books, even me, because there is this jumping of over some time in this story. But it's not like intention. It wasn't my intention to make something like innovative. Yeah, I don't know.
So, is it working? I don't hear. Yeah. So I don't know how innovative my books are, but I know one thing. No one has lived the same life I have lived. No one has witnessed the things from my perspective. That means I have something to say. Then you have something to say, that's the first step, you know. There is, then other is professionalism, style, etc., etc. But the first is you have to have something to say. And about innovative, you know, everyone is influenced from someone, you know. There is no literature is not like this, you know, like a flower which can grow somewhere alone in the desert. So I don't know. I hope that my voice is something new and interesting, and I don't think about it how innovative I am.
Thank you.
I sometimes think that you really have to try and experiment and push the boundaries of form and structure. But then at the same time, form follows function. I mean, for instance, Kelly and Victor that you mentioned, I wanted to write a book about a love affair, a destructive love affair, and I wanted to reflect the kind of duality of human nature and the duality of the city of Liverpool where I was born, you know, Protestant, Catholic, 2 football teams, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I thought, all right, that's how I'll write it, from one point of view and then the other point of view. So that form necessarily had to follow the function. Voice, I think, is another thing as well. I think you have to try and push the boundaries of voice. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, those of us who do it will will forever struggle to pay the mortgage and the bills. But I think it's something. What I feel the need to do with every book, to be disruptive and transgressive. I don't know. Again, well, I think probably the most disruptive book I'll ever publish is the one I'm working on now, which is just set during one wedding reception. And nothing happens, basically. It's just a story of human love and resilience. So I'd imagine having that published and people will say, my God, he's really gone too far this time. There's no death or murder in it. You know, it's all about love. He's gone far too far this time. But that's because I'm working against what I've done before. You know, the act of creation is sometimes an act of self-murder. And you destroy what you've already written in order to write something new. So I think there's ways to disrupt without just being gratuitously shocking, of course, which I think a lot of people certainly a lot of first writers fall into that trap, I think.
Thank you very much. Before winding up, I would like to ask our guest a last question, because Niall has written travel books about his native city of Liverpool. Rasa and Archil are very active, I would say, in social media. Archil has already published photographs of his travel in India in Facebook, and I would like to ask her what are their impressions about India, because I guess it is maybe your first staying in India. And how is your first meeting with India and Indian people?
Okay, I can start. My first meeting with Indian people were in Istanbul in airport, because I had a problem with my visa. And this is a great story, because I just had this information thrown in my face that, oh, you have 3 hours to make this happen. And I turned around and there was this Indian guy, and I just jumped on him and I like, I don't know what to do, help me please do that. And he was so calm, so peaceful, so wonderful, and he said, okay, just breathe out, I will give you my internet, we will figure it out. So he did the best possible impression of all of you immediately. So yeah, we spent this time in airport together, and then he gave me his number and he told me, if anything happens, please call me. So thank you for him. Since then, every Indian people I met has been just absolutely wonderful, smiley, kind, pleasant, so thank you for that. About impressions of India, it's impossible to describe. I think it will take me a year at least to wrap around my head all these things. I tried to send some messages to my family, and I said, okay, you know what? Just watch these photos and think about yourselves, because yeah, during 4, 5, this is our 5th day here. During these days, we've seen so much. It's impossible to get it all proceeded so fast. Yeah, and I come from Baltic cities, which are quite calm and quiet, and there's no one actually. So it is a lot for me, but I'm very happy and thrilled to be here. So thank you.
So me and Rasa were talking 2 days ago that Indian people, they are so calm and relaxed, and you talk with them, and why they are driving like this, like they are driving. So how this can be the same people? I'm also full of emotions, and it's hard to give one name, you know, but we are happy here. I'm happy that I come this country. It's my first time. I always wanted to come, and I think I will miss it when I go back.
It's not my first time. I came to Mumbai some years ago, so this is my second time in India. And growing up in the UK, in quite a large city, there were always Indian people around, and Pakistani and Bangladeshi subcontinental people were in my class in primary school. They worked in the local shops, you know, they fixed my dad's car. Subcontinental people have never kind of seemed exotic in any way. They were just around me, you know, everywhere growing up. India, I've been watching the way that the horns are used in the cars. I'm beginning to realise it's actually a language. You have certain. You don't just honk to say you're in my way. You honk to say, okay, you can go before me. I'm beginning to find it's really, really fascinating. So, how many languages do you have? 4? I'm beginning to think you actually have 5, or your cars do rather, which is an interesting thing. The cities are chaos, of course. I'm sure. Certainly bits of Delhi and Mumbai. But there's always going alongside this is some kind of strange, mad beauty. And I've always been fascinated by this country, and it's great to be sitting here in it.
Thank you very much. Please, let's thank our guests for their coming today, for their joining to this wonderful festival. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.